Abigail, you've been watching the space for a long time here. What kind of demand is there for this debt that these universities are trying to sell?
Yeah, thanks for having me. We have followed the higher education space for some time. There's been a lot of credit headlines out of the higher education space, primarily as it pertains to smaller private schools that have had a hard time competing with the larger elite private schools and public flagship schools for students. And quite frankly, the elite corners of the higher education market have been pretty boring. These credits have always traded through the AAA municipal scale. There's incredible demand for names like Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. These have been seen as bulletproof household names that everyone wants to own in their portfolio. So, I think some of that reputation has definitely been tainted with the current administration and the significant headwinds that are coming out of this administration as it pertains to federal funding, student visas, the tax exemption itself. But still, there is very strong demand for these credits. They're trading at wider spreads, but the significant amount of supply has been pretty well absorbed into both the municipal and corporate debt markets.
Okay, so these are seen as blue chip investments for a lot of investors. Having said that, what about the rating agencies? Are they likely to downgrade their ratings on any of these schools because of these external weaknesses?
Yeah, I think there's been a narrative in the higher education market that's certainly been upheld by the rating agencies that a lot of these elite schools are kind of too rich to fail. And so while Moody's and S&P apply a negative outlook to the higher education sector at large, they have yet to take action on any of these individual names. Many of them still retain, AAA, high AA ratings and stable outlooks. And the reason for that is these extraordinary endowments that these schools have that's seen as this critical crutch to kind of contend these attacks from the administration. And I think as long as they can dip into endowments, as they can use some of these extraordinary measures as bridge financing and other stopgap type of measures, I think they will be able to retain those ratings.
At what point do you worry about collateral damage? I mean, they can retain the ratings, but they're going to have to, I guess, in some ways, change how they operate and, I don't know, maybe rethink their business model in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the actions that have been inflicted by the administration are by no means small cuts that, these schools can put a Band-Aid on. These are significant wounds that are requiring, triage. Schools are having to, implement hiring freezes. They're having to cut staffing. They're having to scale back on research programs. And I think there's now, some consideration to the revenue side as well. There's a lot of schools out there that are, considering increasing class sizes. They have been highly selective institutions. There's still a lot of demand from students to enter these schools. And so there is capacity on that side as well to kind of generate more tuition revenue.
Very quickly, Abigail, who comes out of this ahead? Which schools are better positioned as a result of all this pressure on the elite schools?
Yeah, I think we saw a pretty clear takeaway on who's going to be the winner in this story through the endowment tax that came out of that House budget reconciliation bill. The endowment tax that was instituted as part of that bill specifically excluded religious schools, for example. And I think we're going to see some of the more conservative or moderate schools really come out ahead in terms of kind of being bypassed in terms of these specific attacks out of the administration. We've also seen the public flagship schools do extraordinarily well over the past decade to attract students